think back to your very first job, what was that first opportunity that you had to contribute to the workforce? What did you do? What was the environment like? How did it feel? Was it exciting? Was it nerve-wracking? Were there a lot of opportunities? Or did it take some time to find the right fit? And now, how has your work journey evolved? Where are you today? How did you get there? Welcome to Time to Come Alive. This weekly podcast affords me with the opportunity to meet some wonderful people. My name is Valerie Hope, and I am your host. Today is no different. This is a conversation to help us become more conscious, more connected, as well as creative. And my special guest, which I'll introduce in just a moment, will bring just that, and probably even more, if I dare say. Now, those of you who are not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please make sure you do that so that you get notified anytime a new video comes up. And if you'd like to actually get an email announcing any of the new sessions, please go to timetocomealive.com and subscribe there, and then you'll get an email directly in your inbox that will let you know when a new episode is published. But today, my special guest is Laurie Larrea. And Laurie, I may need you to unmute there. But first of all, Laurie, I don't know if you probably don't remember this, but I met you about 19 years ago or so when I worked at the Regional Dallas Chamber, and I worked for Patty Clapp. And at the time, my role was Workforce Development Manager. So I got to go to some of the committee meetings with you and at Texas Instruments and City of Dallas. And this is the thing that struck me the most. Whenever you and Patty walk in the room, now for those of you who don't know Laurie and Patty, you're not statuesque. I wouldn't describe you as statuesque, but man, you guys packed a punch whenever you sat, and you not even sat, when you walked into the room, the level of power, that was like a Wonder Woman moment. There was so much charisma, there was so much passion. When you spoke and you shared your opinion, you did so with grace, but you also did that with a lot of assertiveness and pluck. And I took some notes. I tell you, I took some notes because that was my first experience working in a corporate environment for the most part. And the people that were sitting around the table had titles that at that time I could only aspire to and probably only heard on TV. So I just want to say how much that made an impression on me. And over the years, you and I have kind of been in and out of contact, but I'm so grateful that you are still rocking it here in Dallas. And I want to know more about why and how do you keep that up? You're such an example and such a role model. So thank you so much for saying yes to being a part of Time to Come Alive today.
Thank you for asking. This is very, very good. I love seeing you. Love talking with you again.
Oh, same here.
And hello to your whole audience. This is wonderful.
Hey, what else should we know about you, Laurie?
Oh, goodness. I am only 5'1". I think Patty's shorter than I am. So.
I think so.
Just Texas born and bred, and grew up down on the coast in Port Arthur. Made my way to Dallas on purpose. I was here on my first business trip was to Dallas, Texas. And I remember turning to my colleague and saying, I'm going to work here. And she's like, why? That was so foreign to us. And I said, I don't know, but something's calling me. It took me another 10 years or so to get here. But things have worked out very well. And by the grace of God, literally, because I know that I'm not that good a planner. Things have gone very well. And I'm now 31 years as the executive director / president, CEO of Workforce Solutions Greater Dallas. And I still love Workforce Solutions. I still love the work, the economic development part of it. I don't know that I would have ever found a job quite as perfect for myself. But I'm very glad it happened.
Why was it so perfect for you? Because this is who I see when I think workforce is you. And part of it is because that's how I was introduced to it. But you have such a passion and drive for that particular area of our city's development and growth that it's actually quite is impressive. So what is it about it that made it so perfect?
It took me a while to figure this out. Work makes life happen.
Mm.
I come from a generation where women were suburban housewives, and our generation is the first working generation. And think of all the possibilities when you work, the travel, the people you meet, the challenges, but it's mostly the accomplishments. It's a sense that there is strong purpose in your life. I'm still a wife and a mom. I didn't forgo any of it. And I always tell young women, you can have it all. You just can't have it all at one time.
I love that. Work makes life happen. Okay, so let's, before we go into what you do in your role, because I think that's such a key part of, especially nowadays, there's so much conversation about the workforce. How did you determine that this was the work that you wanted to do and that it was such a perfect fit that you've stuck with it for 31 years?
And actually 42 in the business, just 31 in Dallas,
Got it.
42 last May.
Wow.
And it's a cautionary tale. I was unemployed. It was the 70s. I had a bachelor's degree in psychology with an emphasis on industrial. And oh, I was going to revolutionize the oil and gas industry. Just ask me. Yeah, I I did a little audition, if you would. It wasn't quite an interview at Texaco, where my dad had worked 39 years. And they politely told me where the door was.
Oh,
They had no interest in another female professional if you weren't in the HR department. This is a long time ago.
okay.
So I went to the unemployment office. I was in my master's program and I quit school because it became a matter of money. You got to make money to stay in the game.
Mm.
And literally in an unemployment line, and a guy behind the desk said, "You have a degree. Would you like a desk here?" I said, "I'm not busy. What would you like me to do?" They interviewed me, hired me as a temporary to work for the state of Texas.
Hmm.
And my first job was interviewing without the benefit of a language coach or any kind of language line back then. I was interviewing Vietnamese refugees as part of the resettlement program down in my hometown. And I was doing about 30 people a day without the benefit of English language. It was like, oh my goodness, this is work. This is something that matters to people. Finding a job so that you can then acquire the skills necessary to speak the language, to be a part of society.
Hmm.
And it was eye-opening. The other thing I did that summer, and I'll never forget, the summer jobs program, something that has died in our culture, and I'm determined to make it back before I retire. But I interviewed 14 and 15-year-old children who lived in poverty. And back then, mom and dad didn't come to the interview. It was us interviewing for a summer job, and just heartbreaking stories. I still claim my heart is with my 13, 14, 15-year-old customers who everybody determines is too young to work, but these kids need a chance and they needed mentorship.
Mm.
That's how it all began. And when I finished my temp assignment, the state informed me I really wasn't their type. You talk
They're
about,
picking themselves right now.
yes, they are, because my grants come from them and they have to put up with me now. But they told me, you're just not, you're not marking time like you're supposed to. So we have these people down the street. We'd like you to go see them. And there wasn't then a council of governments. We still have those. And these were young college grads just out of their master's program who wanted to revolutionize what was happening in terms of finding a job, putting young professionals to work. And the 70s were tough. The late 70s were a bad time for us in terms of job opportunities. So they hired me pretty much on the spot. And that was a long time ago. And I've never lost the passion.
Clearly. All right. So you said a few things that I want to go back to. One is you weren't marking time. So what exactly did that mean? What were you trying to, what were you revolutionizing, dare I say, or nudging them or distracting them? What
I'm
was
a
going
people
on?
girl, and I think you say why as opposed to okay.
Uh-huh.
Why comes out of my mouth before I can think about it. Well, you can't do that. Why? Well, you
Mm.
have to do it this way. Why? And when I saw injustice, I identified it. And I was a lot of trouble for a temporary, I think. Now that I think back, I don't blame them a bit.
They weren't, they're like, look, just do the job. There's some admin tasks, take care of those and then go home.
Correct.
Interesting. Well, that's cool that they saw that promise and they sent you to some place where you could actually flourish and use your revolutionary ways.
And some of them they take great pride in the fact that I started with them. I'm still in touch with my first manager. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's good. And so let's talk about the young people, because there's I know that's something that's a is really touches you to support
Yep.
and see that come to life, especially if you want to bring the summer jobs program back. So what is it about young people, 13, 14, working? What does that do for a young person, you think?
Think back. Think back to when you were 12,
Hmm.
13, and everybody said, but you're not old enough.
Hmm.
You're not old enough to work. You're not old enough to drive a car. You're not old enough to go with the older kids. And yet, you're not a child. You're a young adult. And I've noticed that most young adults who get that exposure to someone who works, someone who's not their teacher, not their parent, it brings them out of themselves. There's blossoming. And I also like to say that, well, they haven't yet adopted an attitude. At 16, 17, it gets really intense.
It does. I'm nodding because I maybe my mom took a page out of your book. I'm not really sure, but there's four of us in my family. I have three brothers, and my mother was such an advocate for us to not be home during the summer. We had 2 weeks where we could sleep all day, we could eat Pop Tarts for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and she was fine with it. Play video games till all hours of the night. None of that mattered. 2 weeks though. After 2 weeks, she's like, you need to find something to do outside of the house.
Yep.
So luckily, my brothers were all Boy Scouts, so they've all become Eagle Scouts and stuff. So they were always on that track. I didn't care for scouting as much, so I kind of dabbled and I did a lot of volunteer work. So you're absolutely right. It shaped and informed so much of who I am today and how much I knew and how much I was able to try out with no risk. We weren't asked to go find paying jobs, but find a way to contribute. And so it sounds to me that that's really what you're advocating for, is that young people have something to contribute and it's an opportunity to shape them early on. So what kind of programs do you see have an impact on someone that young? Like what kind of things would they do?
First time out, we do career awareness. So, doing something that exposes young adults to the opportunities before them, connecting education to work, speakers, people who really matter in the community, talking to them about their futures, amplifying the hope that's still in their heart.
Mm.
I am convinced that hopeless youth are the largest danger to our world.
Say more
They
about
can't, if they can't see themselves in the future, they don't really care about you and yours in the future. And it's really hard for kids who don't have that exposure um, to what jobs can really bring, to what that circle of friends from a job can really bring, to moving out of where they maybe are struggling, to helping their parents, their siblings. This is important. It's important to create that sense of want and hope and direction. How am I going to get that?
that.
So,
Mm.
a lot of our work has been when we can work with young adults. Now, they're in school still. We have some great programming we've been working on with Dallas Promise. If you don't know about Dallas Promise, it's phenomenal. Our community is doing very well with helping kids pay for the first 2 years of school with no out-of-pocket cost for college. But a lot of what they need is direction on how to spend that time in college, how to spend those resources. What am I going to do with my life?
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to be productive and build the life I want to have? Beyond that, a lot of the kids can work in public sector beginning at age 14.
Wow.
Public sector, anything having to do with volunteer work that you would normally do, but a subsidy is necessary. They need to equate my work matters and my work makes money. And then that money is a way of training them the value of the work, how they are going to use that money when they have it. So we do financial literacy, that's a huge part of it, decision making, empowerment, lots of things that don't get covered in school.
Yeah. So these are courses, basically. They're not just work experiences. They're kind of work study-ish type programs, it sounds like.
We've always had an education portion to a work program.
Okay.
But the kids can still work a 30-hour week on a job site as long as it's all safe, mostly clerical work, things that, you can't violate the child labor laws, or any of the safety measures. Now, the situation this summer would have been tragic either way. There were no jobs that would probably encourage young children, young teens, to be in the workplace right now. And we can't find many remote jobs for that age group. We're having enough trouble getting them connected for their schoolwork.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking to 2021. I'm very optimistic. Our mayor of Dallas is he's very set on having a signature youth program. Our chief of police had one last summer, and I believe they did work out some, at least coaching this summer with another nonprofit. So it's whatever we can work into their lives to make sure these start becoming um, points of direction when they
Mm-hmm.
return to school.
That's
Why
huge.
does that math matter? You know?
That's huge. I love that about giving them hope. Sounds like giving them a future to live into. You mentioned that back in the 70s it was tough, right? And especially in the workforce world. Talk to us a little bit about what you've seen transpire since since you started in this particular type of work to now. I can't imagine you've seen all things. What are the ones that stand out to you that have been the most impactful on you?
Things change, and that's okay. It really is. I have seen this economy down for the count, up to its peak, down again, up to its peak, down again. Have hope and have heart. This too shall pass. We shall move forward and we will regain. I've seen it too many times to doubt it. I did an interview the other day with a news reporter, and he said, "Oh, statistically, and we've talked to, and maybe the blush of Dallas is gone and people won't be interested." I said, "Not so fast, sir. Don't ever sell Texas out, much less Dallas." Um, People here have an entrepreneurial spirit, wildcatters, people who founded Texas. I've never, just looking at the paper today, Amazon's going to do more jobs in our community.
Mm,
We're going to have some relocations in this community. It's not going to go away. We are going to make it better, but it takes all of us trying, and that's something that I have seen. Let's not repeat mistakes of the past, and let's not buy into this division.
yeah.
We got to pull together. I used to tell people, because the current mayor is my ninth mayor. I have seen every definition of political persuasion you can imagine. And I said something that's encouraging here. We're all Dallasites. We all want what's best for our own children. There is it's almost like they will not separate this community. They just will not.
Mm,
We will work together, and that's really most important. So I think keeping it local, keeping it regional is critical. I hate when people say, "Well, what is the picture in Dallas?" And I said, "Don't ever average 2 million people. It's not smart." The stories are independent, the neighborhoods are independent, and we have to look at all of those differences to tell the whole story. Because on average, we look pretty good no matter what. That doesn't mean that we don't have things to do, things to fix.
yeah.
So, that's kind of my way of getting through each crisis, is looking forward and remembering we've been here before. It's
Mhm.
different, but we've been low before and we'll get back.
Where does that hope and heart come from, Lori? Like where do you find that in yourself?
I believe that a lot of it is where you place your brain.
Your brain?
Your brain. If you live in, a depressed state, if you live in a situation where it's always bad, it's always going to be bad.
Mhm.
And I understand it's hard. Believe me, I grew up in a working class family. My mom got our jobs for us as soon as we were able to work. She got our Social Security cards and our first jobs. It wasn't a struggle to know that work was part of life. And we were just going to keep doing what we had to do to get where we needed to go. And I think that concerns me about today. Um, Back when I went to college, 4 years was 4 years and you didn't think much of it. Right now, we measure everything in minutes. How many minutes will that take? Uh, Truly.
This is
So,
a
what have you?
60-minute podcast, and people are like, 60 minutes. So you heard it here. Lori said it's okay. Keep going,
It
Lori.
is definitely
I,
okay.
I support you.
Our time works against our money, and our time works against our lifestyle. I
Mm,
think most of us who've been home now and doing web calls realize there's no more transition time. There's no more trip to that meeting where you might be 5 minutes late. It's now minute by minute by minute. It's
mm,
an old song, isn't it? Minute by minute.
mm.
But I see that we are really capitalizing on this and using every minute to make something happen. Well, that's our young people. You mentioned video games. It's minute by minute by minute. When they see a 4 year trajectory with breaks, the dropouts are explainable. That's why we don't have as many graduating from college as we need, or as many finishing a 2 year certificate as we need. And it's so important in the marketplace. So important.
So what you're saying is that right now the value of the time that's invested in going to school has diminished because we have created, or we now live in a culture that's moving so quickly. Interesting.
And
But
the expectation is that it moves quickly for you. And I think when we try to slow down a 19-year-old, we're fighting a losing battle.
so true, so true. What was it like for your family? I mean, I gotta imagine that it was, if you walk into a meeting with this energy and want to revolutionize and ask why, I can't imagine what the Laurea household was like. So tell us.
uh, Interestingly, my dad was a machinist and he took great pride in being an apprentice machinist. He had come through an apprenticeship program straight out of the Army. And they made them, back then you could make enough money to raise 3 kids, and mom didn't work. And that's the life we had. But I'll tell you, my dad was a character. He had never been given the opportunity for college. His friend had. So in his head, college was the thing. That was the North Star. So he took three of us, and we're quite different in ages. And he said, "You don't leave this house until you have a college diploma." And he was serious. So we went to Lamar University, which is at that point, it was 20 minutes, 20 miles away, commuter college, affordable, but a good education. And not one of us left the home until we had our college diploma.
Wow. What, and you said you studied industrial psychology and psychology.
And a really strong English and math background. So I had a Bachelor of Science in psychology, which was unusual. But it was never about, the white mice in the maze. For me, it was about bettering the lives of people who worked for a living. And that's sort of where we still are today. And what's sad to me is, why haven't we gained more ground in 40 years of my career?
What do you
Uh,
mean by that?
well, when I entered the workplace and when I began to be a manager, I was under 30 years of age.
Mhm.
And men mentored me, and I don't mean in a poor way. They gave me tips. You're very linear about your thinking. You communicate rather succinctly. You have a great memory. Take this project, do this project. Let's see. And within 3 years, I was running a large department.
Mm.
And then I got to Houston because a gentleman watched me perform something about union work. And he said, "We need you in Houston. Please come." So I went. 4 years there, I came to Dallas. I applied for this job, and they told me I was not the person they needed.
You applied to be the president of Workforce Solutions?
Executive director at the time.
Executive director, okay.
Yeah, they told me you're not what we had planned on. And I say this, I tell this story because I want women to understand. It's not ever, it may just be not now.
Mm. Hmm.
So I took a consulting job for a year and got to raise my child working from home. That was cool. And within that time, I became a consultant and I consulted for this organization for a little while. I took a job there October, and by November, I was the executive director.
Uh-huh. You know,
That's what I say.
it's a great story. And I actually, you know, Patty's a great friend to both of us. When I came to Dallas, I'd spent 5 years literally living out of a suitcase, working for a nonprofit called Up With People, where I was
Yes.
traveling the world. I was in every role, from operations to public relations to recruitment, and going to cities all over the all over the world, setting up these events for 125 young people with community media, you name it. Did tons in those 5 years. And then when I moved to Dallas, it was hard to find a job. And just by grace of God that I found online, it was my first online job finding experience, the Chamber of Commerce. And I remember my mom saying that, hey, Chamber of Commerce, usually they're all connected. So find out what you can, connect with there. And they actually had a position. It was an administrative assistant position, which I was like, but I've been to Denmark and Venezuela. And I'm like, what? I don't think so. But when I met Patty, first of all, she was phenomenal. And I remember her telling me specifically, look, here's what I have. And I see you can do more.
Mhm.
Give me 8 months, give me 9 months. And when this position opens up, someone was going on maternity leave. She said, when this position opens up, it's yours. And I have to tell you, it was the most humbling position that I'd had at that time because, like you, I'd been in the workforce since I was a young adult. So I'd
Yes.
been around, I traveled the world, and here I am. Coffee and copies? What?
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, I learned so much. And that's when I got to watch you guys in action and how you showed up in board meetings. I learned how to staple and make appointments with CEOs. And it was a learning experience that really set me up. So I think, to your point, it was a launch pad. And I think that's the thing I've learned about work, is that every position becomes a launch pad when and if it's used to learn and grow oneself. And it sounds like that's kind of your experience, and that's what you advocate for others. What other things are you noticing, especially about women in the workforce, as compared to when you first got in to today?
Um, that's a good question. I think one of the things that concerns me is knowing our value at work.
Say more about that.
Now, that's a tough one for me because I am guilty as anyone else of not asserting my negotiating power.
Mm.
It's not defining us. Money doesn't define women, but we also need to understand that we are only benefiting our families and the women who come behind us
Yeah.
by articulating why you are worth certain paychecks. Men do it rather automatically. Men don't have as much stress about it. Um, I have interviewed more women who underestimate their worth in the job than I have those who get it. I can only point to one or two that I've hired who say, "No, ma'am, I'll take that much more to be in this job."
Mm.
And that's how others negotiate. And I think all too often women go, "Oh, thank you so much for giving me this job." Um, that's not good. That's not
Mm.
good. and asking for what you need. I'm going to give you an example. I have a lot of women on my staff, only because in the nonprofit sector, it's a good place for women because we're usually family friendly. In my office, you can bring your children to work, particularly when newborn. For the
Mhm.
first 3 to 6 months, we'll let you bring your newborn, bring a swing and a pallet, and take care of your child. It's important. It's important to the kids. It's important to kids to see mom work. But the other point that I see, women have needs perhaps, and they think, well, that's not available to me because the company's never done that. Heck, ask for it. You never know. Senior accountant, who is now my CFO, has triplets, and she's very young, and she's very good and very accomplished. And one of her children needed her and needed surgery. She worked from home for an entire year,
Mm.
came in the office 3 times a month to make sure she turned in the reports. She was always at her phone. We set her up at home. He got better. When she came back, we made her the CFO,
Mm.
and
Wow.
she's under 36.
But Laurie, what does it take for a leader? And in this case, you said, obviously you're the leader. You get to make those decisions. You have a background and a passion for supporting people. What would it take for a leader to think the way you think and create a workable space and opportunity for women in this case?
I think empathy is critical. Understanding you've got to build the workforce that you want to manage, and you have to give people what they need to succeed. That means it's not about you and your management style. It's about finding out what other people need from you because everybody responds differently. It can't be about Laurie's management style. That's not a thing. The thing is, what does this person need? What does that person need? Some are self-starters. Some need you to call them every day. That's just the role you play. I think the other thing that bothers me about work is there are too many given customs, because they're not rules, they're customs.
Good point.
Imagine how far the pandemic has pushed us in work from home.
Mm-hmm.
Just imagine.
Yeah.
This would have taken another 10 years to get as far as we've come. It would have.
Sad, but true.
And I see so much productivity out of my people. And what I hear in the boardroom is everybody else has the same response. They're all seeing, oh my gosh, my people are really thriving. Oh, we're getting work done. And then the next thing that comes up is, but I bet I could work with fewer people. And then you go, stop doing that. I have been blessed all these years to have amazing boards of directors. The board of directors is critical for me. If I had people who were sitting there saying, don't, but they just say, perform, do, make it work. And then they trust me to do that. I've been very blessed with that.
What have you noticed in the leaders that you work with and that you consult with throughout the city? You're in connection with Fortune 500 corporations in many cases too. So, what are you noticing that they're open to or resist as far as adapting to the workforce they want to manage?
I think what I've noticed, particularly in the last 23 weeks, is that it was always in everyone's mind, but no one shared it. So it's sort of this moment where people are going, oh, you too? Oh, you like, oh, well, we should have said something. So there's this losing these artificial rules, these artificial conditions. I think we were all open for it. And for me, it's people my own age that concern me. You gotta roll with it. You gotta be nimble. You gotta be open to change. When I hear people that go, well, it's about change disturbing us. Well, change needs to disturbing. Disruption is great,
Mhm.
but you've got to be open to it. I laughingly tell people I'm the best. Well, I can't say that these days, but I'm a heck of a tweeter for my age group, right? But I'm there and I'm doing it. Now I'm gonna forgo TikTok. Sorry. Um,
You don't have any dance moves? What?
well, I got moves. They ain't going
They're
online.
not going to
Uh,
TikTok.
no, no. Laughingly, I think it's open to change, sharing the change, and encouraging each other to change. And that's what's important right now. Share it, talk about it. You're going to find out more people have a similar mind. I think the next thing up is maybe a 4-day work week. I think that's
Mm.
kind of what's out there because you can maximize the days. People have done it for a long time, the 10-hour days or the 9-hour days. Get
Mhm.
that synergy going and get something actually accomplished and then give people a chance to rest.
What's getting in the way of us being that disruptive, or some of these leaders, being disruptive? Clearly, the pandemic has thrown people for a loop and people are just kind of managing to stay somehow in some state of normalcy. But what else besides these external conditions do you notice is in the way?
Well, I think before this, it was worry that we would just cycle out of control and lose those things that made us the right fit. We would lose the profit margins. We would lose the things in entrepreneurial. We would lose the things like the performance that I have in my shop. And then we found out because we were forced to learn, we found out 2 months later we were still okay. Then the third month, we found out, well, we're not just okay, we're innovating. And now it's become a new norm.
Mm.
So it has ushered us down this transition so much faster than we would have gone on our own.
Uh-huh.
And now I'm saying, let's bring it. Let's get more of this. Let's find out how well we can work
Mm.
and survive this pandemic because it's important.
Mm.
Um, I will tell you, in unemployment, particularly in the Dallas community, the bulk are female who have lost their jobs
Okay.
under the age of 35 and predominantly women of color.
Mm.
That cannot stand. We've got to find a way that they either upskill or they find that any kind of a transition to work. And that's something we've got to work on as a people. Everybody's got to have a job. If they had one, they got to have one.
Mhm.
Not too many people are independently wealthy, and not too many people who are living on $7.50 to $9 an hour can afford to not have that income. So I think our next challenge is building the jobs for the people who need them, particularly the future workforce that's going to replace me and the boomers. Uh, we can't just shut them out in their 20s and say, oh, sorry. It's time for us to find jobs for them that are career and they are compensation oriented. They are not just a job on the way.
Lori, which organizations or industries or sectors do you see doing it the right way, or the way that you'd like to see everyone do it?
Tech, definitely.
Mm.
And tech is more than an industry, it is teching across all industries. I laughingly tell people, new job I think that every agency needs is a web call producer. Think of how many web calls go awry when you're in the middle of the webcam or and you can't get the leadership or the speaker to come into the picture. That's a skill set. That's a
Mhm.
skill set that people can learn. It's going to give us more skills, I think, and more conversation around who is needed in the workplace than we've ever had before. Healthcare is doing enormous things, especially tech healthcare. But healthcare itself, that's tactile, that's in person, that's the need for childcare.
Mhm.
If you're a working mom, working two jobs, mom and outside the home, I'm very fearful of this. Childcare is one of the things that we administer as the workforce board, and centers are closing. Parents are fearful. There's a lot going on in that particular industry of childcare, and yet how many people can't do everything they need to do from home, work from home, and school your children?
Mhm.
We got to find a solution. The solution may be an extended family. I've saw recently several colleges ask 5,000 volunteers from the college to become tutors to kids in K through 12. That's amazing, but it's almost like everybody's got to do one. Every college kid needs to find a kid they can mentor and be there to help the parent continue to make an income. This is a tough time.
Absolutely. And I hear so much of your passion and your interest goes to working families, right? And predominantly women in this case. What are some of the ways in which women, we could help ourselves. You know, clearly there's a lot of things happening in the organizations that we may be working for. If those, I happen to have my own company, so I don't, my organization is doing okay. But for those that work for other organizations, what are some things that we can do to safeguard what we currently have, or for those that may be displaced, find and connect with something that could be meaningful?
Communication, talk it, ask the questions, check on family, check on friends, check on their children. Today I had two professionals say, oh, but my daughter, oh, but my son, what can I do? You'd be surprised how the synergy around problem solving is so critical right now. And the stigma, there is no stigma. There's no stigma to my son had COVID. There is no stigma to my daughter lost her job. You've got to reach a point where we are all agreeing this is not normal. This is not about individuals not reaching their potential. This is just the way times are, and we've got to help each other. So I
Mm-hmm.
think the communication and getting over the stigma, and we've always had this culture. Unemployed people, oh my goodness, you and me without a job. They don't speak up. They expect that job to come to them without having to say, I really need a job. Can you help me? And the higher up the ladder, more likely they will not communicate. So that's something we've got to beat down right now. Communicate, talk about it, talk at church or talk online at church. Call people, visit with people, make people aware of what your skills are and what you can do. I get emails from all over the country for people saying, I'd like to move to Dallas. And I'm like, well, these days you don't even have to move, but you could work in Dallas
Mm-hmm.
from wherever you live. So that's another thing is this has opened up the world, but it's also opened up worldwide competition.
It absolutely has. So you're saying the right now the thing that really gets in our own that could get in our own way as part of the workforce is not sharing with people that we're looking for those opportunities, or that people are needing, you know, more money or perhaps childcare. There's so many things right now that we need each other for. And it's funny because I remember thinking at the very beginning of the pandemic, you know, and all these organizations were getting together and doing these beautiful benefits, and the most unlikely people created partnerships. There is so much synergy and so much collaboration happening, and it's almost like it's starting to die down a little bit. And what I'm hearing from you is this is an opportunity to amp up the partnership and synergy and collaboration, not retreat into, oh, I'm embarrassed, I don't want to tell people I needed a job or that I want a promotion. Or interesting. And Laurie, when you think about what are some of the ways that you feel like, what would you say, like if you're in this situation, if you were in this situation, or if you had any of your staff go through something like this or have family members, what are some of like the top three things that you think would make a difference in them getting over the stigma?
Oh goodness. Again, communication, because I notice with people, I must be the only one. I must be the only one who's scared. I must be the only one who didn't succeed or have a game plan. I must be the only one that lost money. Oh, I must be the only one that can't find suitable childcare. No, you're not alone.
How do you get over that though? If you're embarrassed to say it and you don't post it, you're always posting happy pictures or your lattes, or like, how do you get over that fear of just letting people know I need support?
And I think it is the trusted conversation. It's finding someone who looks a lot like your situation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm encouraging professional women with childcare issues to please talk to each other, to please talk to me. It's that fear that they have somehow failed. Nobody's failed.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has failed here. This is not personal. This is something that everyone is experiencing. Even especially the professional women. It breaks my heart to get a phone call or to get an email that says, I think I'm going to have to make a choice. I'm going to either be a good mom or I'm going to keep my career, because with the way things are, I can't do both. And I'm begging them, please don't step aside. Please, we've worked too hard to get you here and you've worked hard. Now, do you have extended family? Do you have some college kids down the street? Find those remedies that used to be community and still could be, and don't always look for a solution that you can pay for. Throwing money at the problem does not seem to work during a pandemic.
Yeah. Eh, Well, I don't have kids, so I've not had to think in that way. But what was something has shifted. Clearly, more women in the workforce over the last 40, 50 years. Clearly.
Clearly.
But this idea, you mentioned community. The idea of having community. My mom talks a lot about how when we lived in another country, we were from Panama originally, but she said when she first went back to work, that it was about finding the neighbor who also had a child that was young enough that she could also watch my brother or me, and she found that having a circle in the neighborhood made all the difference. And then finding the man next door who drove a little bus to the bus station that she could get
Yep.
on every morning, things like that. So where did that go? And where did that go? Where did that sense of community go?
I think strangely we started paying for things. It really, childcare when I was growing up was grandmother, my aunt next door. It was the woman across the street because her daughter was my age. And then we cultivated an entire industry around childcare. Sadly, I hope it's not fear of your neighbors, not fear of the unknown. And that could be a part of it. We all live very comfortably alone in our homes. But we're okay at the workplace. Isn't that strange? We all love that socialization. Again, a lot of people are walking outside their doors lately, meeting their neighbors for the first time, or at least saying hello. My son will be 33 Friday. And the only way we got through this, his dad and I, we laughingly used to say one day we had to drop him off at luggage at Love Field to make the handoff.
Between the two of you, not with some random stranger. I just want to make sure that was clear.
We really treasured that only child. You can imagine. But the way we got through it was that neighbor. And strangely, the boys grew up together. So when they were 10 and said, I'm not going to childcare anymore,
Mm,
um, she worked right next door to me at Bank of America. And we would run into each other. And suddenly we realized her work hours were different than mine. She could take the boys at the afternoon. I could take the boys in the morning.
oh, that's
Drop them
beautiful.
off at my house. But we've got to be open to that.
Yeah.
That and extended family. I'm sure you got a history too. I grew up in a very large Cajun family.
Mm,
I knew my grandparents, I knew my aunts and uncles, we knew our cousins, but people got so separated. I
mm,
notice in some cultures there's still that connectivity to family, and you build the family you don't have. It's not always blood. You
yeah.
build, but
Oh,
we've
you're so much about building. I love it. Yeah.
got to ask for help though, and you got to
Yeah.
be open to yeses and nos, and you got to offer help.
Hmm. You know what I hear in what you're saying is that this is an opportunity not only for industry, not only for businesses to innovate, but for us as community dwellers to innovate how we relate to other people. Who do we have in our circle? How do we connect with them? What support can we provide? What support can we ask for? So, yes, innovate community. I love that. Love that. And
Rediscover it, right? It's always
rediscover.
been there, but rediscover it because of need. That's
Mhm.
what drives things. Necessity. Yep.
Yeah. Lori, because I know you're a force to be reckoned with, of course. That can't I can't say that enough. But I always like to peel back the layers a little bit more. So I have these I have these cards for a game that I like to play called We're Not Really Strangers, which are basically just kind of get to know you questions. And so
Okay.
I'm gonna give you a chance to tell me which card would you like to choose, and I will ask the question that's on the card so we can learn even more about you. So tell me, which of these cards would you like for me? Just tell me when to stop.
Right there. Wait, back up two. There you
There?
go. Yep.
Okay.
There you
Right
go.
here. All right. The question. Ooh. I'm going to show it so that you know also I'm not cheating. Is what question are you trying to answer in your life right now, Laurie?
That's easy.
What is that?
What is my next chapter?
Say more about this.
Well, I've done this for quite a long time. I have had the honor to do this for a long time. There has to be a time when we all consider moving to the next stage. And I think about I don't want to rush the timing. I want to make sure my team is all set. But what do I do next? To me, it never ends. I do not see a place in my life where I am not working at
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I've thought of writing, I've thought of consulting, I've thought of a million things. And yet there's going to be a right thing, but I've just got to study on it, contemplate it. I've got to work through it. It will come. It will come. And I'm excited about it. Change is always a good thing. It is. But it's how we greet change. It's how we greet anything, right? How
Mhm.
do you withstand trials like this? How do you withstand grief? It's how we meet it and put it through.
But some would say, 41 years, 42 years, time for a rest, take a break. You and your husband can go and chill out, I guess, in your backyard now. You can't do much travel, but what is it in this next chapter that's drawing you to that, to doing something more?
Because I can.
Mm.
A long time ago, my mother asked me because she had been a stay-at-home mom, and yet she loved when she worked. She worked the census, she worked the voting polls. She loved the socializing that came with work. And she said, "Why do you work so hard? Why do you do this?" I said, "Because I can." And I figured that out a long time ago. If we can, we must. Apparently, our job is not done here until we get in touch with everything that's inside us. And I think there's still more.
And what would you like your legacy to be? Not
Oh,
your,
heavens.
hmm.
I have no idea. Other people have asked me that, and I think of legacy. My goodness, that's made up by the people that survive us.
Yeah.
That's something that other people are to say. I've now done a eulogy or two, and I always study on it and wonder what would they have wanted. And I guess it's good to tell people what you want, but do we really know? Do we really know? Perhaps their vision of us would be better than ours. You know?
What do you think people think of you? What do you think?
Oh, heavens. Those words can't be on this tape. Uh,
I've said only good things, Laurie, so I don't know. I can't imagine.
I'm a tough person. I tell people I'm an acquired taste. Uh, I'm not for everybody. I think people who get to know me realize that there has to be this layer of I'm in charge of a lot, and that in charge behavior tends to transcend. I push, you know that, but I know where I'm going, and I only want what's going to benefit everybody. I don't believe in a lose-win conversation ever.
Everything is possible. That's I think that's the subtext of all the things that we've talked about so far. Everything is possible. I have two last questions for you. One, I wanted to touch on as you were talking about the community and the family structure and how one can continue to amplify. Um, what how have you and your husband thinking about your journey in your career, right? Thinking about how you supported each other. What are some things that you could share with other couples who might be navigating something like this and need to have a partner with whom they could negotiate these
Yes,
times.
yes. As you notice, my married last name is Larrea. My husband is Ecuadorian.
Mhm.
He came from halfway around the world to meet up in Houston, Texas, and marry.
To come and find
And
you. Yes.
yes, this is true. And now it's been 34 years. And people look at the two of us and think, I even had a guy tell me one time, "You quit your job and moved for your husband's career."
Mm.
I said, "What was best for our family?" And he said, "But I would never have expected that of you." My career driven self was not exactly selfish. I wanted what was best for both of us. And I think couples need to learn that. But it has to come from both sides. So there are times when his job gave the family more income. There were times when my job. But having that ability to share, it's for our prosperity, it's for our comfort, it's fulfillment of our destinies, it can't be one or the other. It's got to be both of you working together, especially right now through this. But
Mm.
that's hard to negotiate, and it's not always, oh, aren't we sweet? There's a lot of battles involved, a lot. But don't shy away from the battles. The battles make us all better.
Mm. I think to your point, you said you don't believe in a win-lose conversation. So it sounds like you might have quite a lot of those conversations before you get to one where it's win-win.
On occasion, but there are also limits of how far to push. It's that compassion again and empathy, knowing what matters to both of us, no understanding that. I have a phrase I tell most newlyweds, and that's, I hate to tell you, but whatever the two of you, what either one of you doesn't like, is going to fall out of the marriage after about 5 years.
Wait,
One of
say that
you,
again.
um, both people in a marriage have to pretty much find common ground.
Sure.
So, if he's got a friend you don't really like, or if you like country music and he doesn't, chances are in 5 years, neither one of them are in the marriage anymore.
Wait, not the people. You're talking about either country music or the friend.
And that's what happens
You
is
have
the things that
the
don't suit both of you fall to the wayside for the benefit of the union.
got
And
that.
that's exactly what happens in careers.
Ah.
You have to find that pathway that is not solo.
Mm,
Pathway is shared. Luckily, we married in the industry. He is also workforce,
mm.
and he is retired several years now. He is my biggest cheerleader. But we talk business. We still talk about work, and we share that need to make the workforce better, make workplaces better for people.
And on that note, to just wrap up, what's something that you'd like to leave us with that would help make workplaces even better for people, or resources that you think would help us move in the direction that you've described?
I want people to realize that it's up to you to make your career. It really is. You can talk about the external forces. It's up to you. And if you don't believe in yourself enough, nobody else is going to do it. Believe me. But finding something that really gets your juices going. This is not an act, guys. I
No.
couldn't do this for 40 plus years. Find that turns you on about showing up every day.
Yeah.
What is it? Because if it's not there, you're going to keep looking.
Hmm. Hmm. Get your juices going. That should be on a t-shirt. Oh, last question. Because you just have such a wonderful, generous spirit. I have another set of cards. This is the last set, and the reflection. You have choose from between four cards. So, which of these four would you like? One, two, three, or four?
The second one from your hand.
This one or
Nope.
this?
There you go.
There we go. All right,
You're
last
very
question.
picky.
What question? Oh, okay. From our interview, what question were you most afraid to answer?
Oh, since I really didn't it, legacy, I think. And it's not fear, it's I really think our legacy is not to us to define.
Hmm. Yeah.
Hopefully others get it and know why we did what we did and appreciated it.
Hmm.
But it's real hard for us to talk in those terms. I think it should be hard to talk in those terms.
Yeah. Is that like that Hamilton song? Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? The story that's told, we have no control over.
No.
Yeah.
And that's a cool thing though, if you think about it. One less thing to think is our responsibility.
One less thing, and one more opportunity to make it a good story for people to tell. A worthy
Absolutely.
story. A worthy story. Laurie, it's been such a pleasure. I'm so happy that you said yes to being a part of Time to Come Alive today. You're the epitome of coming alive, and as you shared so aptly during this hour that we've been chatting. I know there's some resources on the website for Workforce Solutions, and I'll make sure to put those in the show notes that people have access to. And thank you so much for being who you are, for having the commitment that you do, and the impact that you have left in the city of Dallas as a result.
You're so kind and you're so easy to talk to. I hope we can talk more soon offline.
Of course, yes. We don't have to record all our conversations, but I would love
Please, anyone out there looking for work, anyone looking for your destiny, please come to wfsdallas.com. We have jobs, we have counselors, we have people, and we have a lot of offices in Dallas, and we can hook you up if you live in another part of the state.
look at that. Maybe even a different part of the country.
Oh, heavens, yes. Yes, yes.
Yes.
There's over
Dallas is open
500
for business.
there's over 500 workforce centers nationwide, and absolutely we are all teleworking for the safety of our customers and our staff, but we're here.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Laurie, it's been such a treat. Thank you so very much. And everyone who's tuned in, hope you've gotten your dose of wisdom for today, if nothing else, to ruffle your feathers a little bit. At least, revolutionizing. That's what she does.
We do.
Again, to remind you, if you'd like to get this episode and many more in your inbox, go to www.timetocomealive.com, or you can also go to YouTube to watch this and subscribe and get notified anytime a new video is posted. Laurie, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. And the rest of you, thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Take care.